halt, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Today, we're going to talk about the Rolex Datejust and the Omega Globemaster. Now, a lot of people compare the Datejust to the Aquaterra, but I think that the better comparison between Omega and Rolex is not between the Datejust and the Aquaterra, but between the Datejust and the Globemaster, who are very similar in a lot of interesting ways. So let's turn the camera around and compare these two watches up close side by side, and leave me a comment below to tell me what you think about which is the better watch. Before we turn the camera around, though, please remember to subscribe. It really helps the channel, or at least leave a like. Thanks. Let's look at each of these watches separately and then look at them together. So let's start with the Rolex. The Rolex Datejust 41 is a relatively recently introduced piece. It came out around 2015 or so, and it uses the latest movement, the 3235, which has 70 hours of power reserve, and with the Parachrome anti-magnetic hairspring. It also has a nickel phosphorus escapement, which is also anti-magnetic. They call it the Chronergy movement, and the escapement. And it's supposed to be higher reliability, lower wear, more resistant to shock, more anti-magnetic in Rolex's words. And it is a classic, beautiful piece. You really can't fault the Datejust as far as looks. It's a stellar, clean, simple design. The indices are well laid out, nice and sharp, full of lume. It's enough lume for a daily wear piece, and some people like the Cyclops, some people don't like the Cyclops. I'm in the middle. I think that the Cyclops is like the helium escape valve on the Seamaster. It gives the watch a distinctive tell and a big design cue for the style of the piece. But the Datejust, this is the version, of course, with the fluted bezel. Fluted bezels, the interesting thing about Rolex is they have very distinctive steps in their design. So smooth bezel is steel, fluted bezel is white gold. Oyster bracelet, of course, there's the Jubilee bracelet, and of course the Rolex crown, and the laser etching and all of the other things to the inscription on the rehaut, all of those things to help you tell that it's a Rolex, because of course there are fakes out there. But essentially, beyond the little things that they give you on the watch you can verify its validity, the basic design cues of the case, which is a beautiful case, the bezel, the face, the bracelet. Point is that it is designed to be easily serviceable, rugged, and well laid out movement. This is a very good watch movement in this piece. You may say all you want about Rolex, and I've said quite a few things about Rolex. They do know how to make a good classic daily wear watch. Now, interestingly enough, the Globemaster has more similarities with the Datejust than it has differences. I mean, in the case of, say, for example, the Aquaterra has very strong different design cues from Rolex, whereas the Globemaster has, I mean, obviously it's got the Pie-Pan dial, which is a Genta design, but I mean, as far as the indices, they're stick indices, or batons, depending on how you like to call them, baton indices, pencil hands, very clean design, and fluted bezel. It does have very much a look like the Rolex, and we'll, like I said, we'll hold them side by side, but I wanted to have a couple of close-ups on the stand so we have some nice clean images for you all to look at so you could appreciate the watch. And the nice thing about the style of the dial is also different. The Omega has kind of a creamy, foamy look to it. There's some like a depth to the dial in that sense. And the Rolex has a beautiful sunburst. It's not so much a a deep dial as it is a pretty dial. Whereas, well, they're both pretty dials, but in the case of the Omega, there's not a sunburst. It's more, like I said, it's more of a beautiful, indistinct surface that's got a depth to it. And the hands and indices are heat blued. You can catch it at certain angles. And they're obviously black mirror polished, or else they wouldn't show up black looking on certain angles. But yeah, you see the heat blue pop out. Really, in the right light, it really makes it look sharp. The Rolex has white gold indices, which also look nice. You know, the difficulty is that they're both really good looking pieces. But let's finish Omega's turn on the stage before we start holding them up next to one another. The Omega, it uses the 8922 Omega movement, which is actually a variation of the 8900 used in the Seamaster and in the Aqua Terra. The 8922 is only used in the Globemaster annual calendar. I imagine if they made an Aqua Terra annual calendar, they could put that same movement in it. But at the present time, the only annual calendar in the mainstream Rolex catalog is the Globemaster, and it has the 8922 in it. Now, the 8922 has only 55 hours of power reserve, so points to Rolex on that. But then again, I've always been one that I'm not a big relier on power reserve as an indicator of longevity or quality. I mean, well, it is a sign of longevity as far as operating time, but not a longevity sign as far as the length of the time the watch will be functional or how well it works of that nature, because, well, these are both very well-made mechanical pieces and can be serviced and maintained and taken care of until the cows come home. The interesting thing about this is that this bezel is made of tungsten carbide, so it's a very shiny, nice, fluted bezel, but it is almost impossible to scratch. They make drill bits out of tungsten carbide. But yes, so I was saying the power reserve is not really that much of an indicator of quality in a watch, because this is a double barrel movement. They have two spring barrels in here. If they chose to, they could have made it longer power reserve. The reason this has two spring barrels has more to do with constant force in their power delivery than it is in trying to get an extended life cycle out of the operating time of the watch. So yeah, I don't, like I said, points to Rolex for having longer power reserve, but I don't see it as a negative in the sense that it's any kind of an indication of quality. One of the nice things about this watch is that it does have a display back, so you can see that beautiful movement. The medallion on the back represents the observatory time trials that Omega won in the history. And as it says here, Omega Master Coaxial 8922. The 8900 series of watch movements were the first in-house movements from Omega to use the coaxial Daniels movement. I have the Seamaster GMT, which has a first-generation coaxial movement based on the ETA modified. Now, this is a full bridge movement, just like the Rolex, although Rolex doesn't let you see the movement in the Datejust, so then it's a point for Omega in that sense. They are both full bridge free sprung balances in that sense, so they neither are skimping at all in any aspect of operation. And the other thing, though, that I do give points to the Rolex for is the Rolex beats at a higher rate. The Rolex is at 28,800 an hour, 28,800 beats an hour, and the Omega, it beats at like a 5.5 beats a second, so 25,200 beats an hour. This is Meta certified. It's 5 + 5 seconds. This is Rolex Superlative Chronometer certified, which is ±2. They send it. The reason they can call themselves superlative, it came up in conversation actually in our last live stream. The reason they can get away with saying superlative is they send it off for COSC certification, and then they further dial it in to ±2. So this actually has a tighter operational range. ±2 is 4 seconds of variance. This is +5 seconds variance. So on paper, and actually probably in use, this is going to be a slightly more accurate piece. So point to the Rolex. Omega, of course, has an annual calendar, which you can't even touch in Rolex until you get to the Sky Dweller. But let's not go there with it. Let's just simply look at these two pieces. So, and as I had said, let's not think of this as an annual calendar. This is an annual calendar variation of the Globemaster. We don't have to consider that aspect of the watch to compare them as daily wear date watches. It's nice that this is an annual calendar, but you can get a Globemaster that's not an annual calendar. And personally, I would say that the Globemaster is a quote-unquote better watch in a lot of ways, but you can't beat the Datejust. I would say if money isn't an issue, get the Datejust if you're looking for something that is really worth the trouble and is a good piece that you can wear on anything. Leather, it'll work on a NATO. It does have a metal strap. I don't have the factory metal for it. I keep it on a leather buckle, a leather with the Omega deployment buckle in this case. But I've worn this on a Milanese, and I've worn it on a NATO and on the like. The thing about the Rolex is that you could get away with putting this on different straps. I've seen people put it on different straps, but it just works so well on the Oyster. It's just a classic setup. If I were traveling and this is the watch I wanted to take with me, I would probably put it on a leather or a NATO, just so that people wouldn't get at first glance that it's a Rolex, and it would keep it from being a high theft target. But frankly, this is such a classic piece. That's why I decided to add it to my collection. As you've seen in earlier videos, I have a love-hate relationship with Rolex, but they do make such nice pieces. So I had to, have one in the collection, and the Datejust is in my mind the most classic. The other pieces may have higher value, but that value comes and goes as taste comes and goes. This piece is so classic. It doesn't get very high in value, as far as speculative, but then again, it doesn't go very low. It doesn't drop below retail, that's for sure, used. And this one actually it retailed for around $7 and change. I got it for less than that because I got it at they were doing a clearance sale. But this one is about $5 and change used. So it's not. It didn't gain. It dropped a little in value. But then again, the Rolex bubble has settled down. I wouldn't say burst because the prices are still reasonably high. But as far as a value, the Omega is a better value in a daily wear, business casual, knocking around, everything from a suit to a polo shirt watch. Let's do a quick wristwatch check and try them each on, do a little bit of a wrist presence look on these watches. And wearing my IWC Antoine Saint-Exupéry Little Prince Arthur watch. It's a GMT UTC. It's got the second time zone there. Really nice piece. I like it a lot. This is one that will definitely stay in the permanent collection. I'm not going to sell this piece. I don't have any plans to sell this piece anytime soon. Here we go. Let's set it up so we can watch the proceedings a little bit. There. So let's try the Omega on first. One of the things I do like about the Omega, it has a very, 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 very highly domed sapphire crystal. So it has a really beautiful effect as if it were a plastic crystal, but it's not. It's sapphire, and you can feel it's such an aggressive curve by running your finger across it. I really like that a lot. It's a beautiful, that part is really nice. It works really well in a suit. It looks elegant, slides well. So let's put it on the wrist real quick. Bum, 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 bum. On my 8-inch wrist, it looks really sharp. I don't know. Like I said, it wears very well against my wrist. I really enjoy this watch. It's one of my favorites in the collection, and can wear it anywhere. Water resistant, anti-magnetic, amagnetic, shock resistant. Really good piece. And of course, the classic, the Rolex, the Datejust. You really can't say anything negative about this piece. It just represents clean, classy elegance. Sporty, clean, classy elegance. And this also sits nicely and rides well on my 8-inch wrist. Really nice piece. So, I would personally say that if I had to choose between the two pieces, I would take the Omega. But that's my personal preference. I think that the Datejust is a very beautiful piece, but I think it's more vertical. It's not as flexible a wear piece. I mean, it's so clean and classic, you can wear it with anything and it won't look bad. But I think that the Omega has a little bit more, a broader spectrum of, an acceptance range, as it were. It's just slightly sportier. The tungsten carbide bezel, to keep it from getting too banged up, I think is a really nice thing. Yet it still has a really nice, elegantly done case, beveled and brushed. But then the Rolex isn't shabby either, you see? So, what would you say? Put your comments down below. What do you say between the two pieces? I'm a lucky man. I have both, but what would you get if you could only get the one? So let's turn the camera around and close out the episode. So that was the Rolex Datejust compared with the Omega Globemaster. It is an annual calendar, but like I said, let's not think of that aspect, because if you think about the annual calendar compared to the Datejust, this is obviously the better deal. If we're talking about the Globemaster, straight up Globemaster, the 3-hander, it comes to a much closer parity, although the fact that the Globemaster is less expensive lends it more cost effective, let's put it that way. So I would say grudging win to the Omega, but the Rolex is punching hard. It's a great piece as well. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you have any ideas on what we could talk about, leave them in the comments below. If you want to say something about this episode, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.